Hi everybody, it's Lindsay, moving into week 3/4. This will be a short video cast as I'm so swamped now with marking, which is fantastic. I am working my way through your assignments. I hope you all sent them in to me. I'm going to sit down and check them all off to make sure they're all there, but they should all be in to me as of Monday night midnight. That was the plan, right? I chose this picture because it reminded me of all of you huddling together, sharing ideas. It is brisk outside. The ice pellets are falling. Okay, so in terms of housekeeping stuff, I think we're all caught up in terms of questions for me. I think that was a good new addition to the course. And questions for the group, also some of those came across the wire. I'm loving the neat things to share. In fact, Darren shared a great little video there that you may want to go and see, a little TED Talk that I've already passed on to my sister because I think it's fantastic. Thank you, Darren. In terms of our extension exercises, I have to show you because they're so darn cute, and I have to encourage you to continue to do them. You guys were great about sharing the photographs and then great about doing the second week, and then the third week you seem to fall away, and I'm wondering if that's because I was asking you to draw. I will ask you to draw again at the end of this week, and I'll tell you a little bit more about that afterwards, but I do want to just share what the extension exercise looked like last week. Okay, so if you forgot, I decided that I really like the idea of having all of our sharings together on one document, so I created a Google Doc, which I'm calling the extension exercises. And although we have done a couple things so far, this last week I asked you to draw an image of a robber by hand, and not just any robber, but the robber who stole your heart. And the first one to contribute was Dana, which I love. There's the sweetest looking kitty, and she did tons of color, which I also love. So you can see it's not that challenging. You just pick up a pencil and draw something. And very cutely as well, Sherry drew a picture of the little ninja, her youngest son Benjamin, who stole her heart. Capable and stealthy as a ninja should be. Seeing your drawings there made me so happy, and I decided I actually had to follow through and do my own drawing, so I did a little drawing of my niece Ruby from a photo that I have on my dresser. Okay, so moving along to what we were doing this last week. You guys were reading Gallagher, The Importance of Constructivism and Constructivist Pedagogy for Disability Studies and Education. And it was fantastic to read your posts around that. The discussion I saw often circling around personal experiences as well with different family members or people that you knew who had experienced being diagnosed or labeled with particular disabilities, and how that has an impact on their life afterwards. And one of the things that it really makes me think about is how identity gets so caught up in learning, and how difficult it is to feel open to learning if you have already been told that you have difficulty learning, which I think is one of the hardest things that I see going on in the school system, is any kind of critique of that understanding of different ways of being in the world. So one of the things that also seemed to be really clear when you were all talking about it is that this argument, Gallagher's argument, is quite marginalized, not only in the school system but also outside the school system, that it's become just sort of accepted that disabilities exist and they are facts and we work with them. What's really interesting too, in one of your posts, I think it was maybe Patricia's post, she talked very early on about how you need to sort of work with the culture of the institution in order to get students support. And I think that that's one of the things that students, or teachers rather, feel quite caught by, is that when they have a student who is struggling, they want to be able to support that student, and the only way that they can do that, it seems, is to
So I highly
encourage you to go and do the extension exercises. I know that sometimes drawing can be
the last thing you feel like doing.
One of the things I find
that
super interesting about this idea is that with class size, that's one of the ways that we could actually, particularly when we're thinking about public school system, is one of the ways that we could actually work with the existence of different ways of learning is by reducing the class size so that, and this is maybe similar to the ideas of universal design, so that everyone benefits, so that there's actually less need for the full identification process and that kind of extra support. And that's kind of been a decision that you could think of as a political decision over the last 20 years, is how we're going to use our resources, whether we're going to reduce class sizes or whether we're going to have added on supports who come to the classes. Once again, I was really pleased to see people making extra recommendations within their posts as well. I noted that Elaine recommended a book called Ungifted that sounded really interesting, and Sherry also offered up a link that I'm really happy to pursue and see some of the things that you guys are thinking about that spark off from our discussions. So after you did some discussion around that article, you moved on and you read the article that was actually to be used for your assignment, which I thought was maybe a useful way for us to construct this little section. And you had a bit of a discussion. Oh, look, somebody's posted something since the last time I checked. You had a little bit of a discussion about ideologies of curriculum. And when I was reading your post, I was thinking that this is kind of like the discussion before I ask you to write. And often one of the things I find in classrooms is that students write better if they have a chance to hash things out and talk. Now, it's not quite the same thing when you're posting, but it was kind of, the idea was to give you a bit of a dry run at something before you actually did the formal paper. One of the things I was thinking about as I was reading your posts and as I continue to read your papers was the kinds of ideologies that have guided my design of this course for you. And one of the things that I was thinking is that the scholar ideology definitely comes through in my work, in that that's one of the reasons why I asked you to think about who was important in the field and why I included Michael Apple in a subsequent week. And also why I made you do this first assignment, which I know was a really challenging assignment, and I do feel for you, and I hope that it wasn't terrible, but I did feel like since this is the ideology, the scholar ideology coming out, since we're doing a master's, there's going to be a little bit of suffering perhaps involved, and that it would be really good for you to have that as part of the background of the work that you've done. In terms of social efficiency, I think that ideology comes through in my work through all the questions that I ask about teaching. I mean, here you are, all educators, in some way, shape, or form, and social efficiency is interested in making people better at their jobs. But the thing that people seem to forget is that in Shiro's article, he says it's also about making them get along better in their own lives. And I thought that was really interesting. And I think in some ways that maybe that's part of what guides me in terms of being more and more interested, maybe re-interested, in how art and music fit into education. Because that seems like a life issue about finding balance in our life and finding productivity in our lives, and happiness as well. And those questions seem to be coming up again and again in all of our discussions. The other thing that I was thinking about in terms of being guided by a learner-centered ideology is that that's one of the reasons why we have the Inquiry Project, is because I believe that you need to be personally invested in the work that you're doing. And I have to say, I've been really enjoying all of my phone conversations with all of you, and there's such a fantastic diversity of projects coming out this year. I'm really looking forward to watching them all develop over the term. In terms of social reconstruction ideology, well, I think for those of you who worked with me in the summer in terms of critical pedagogy, you know that is something that's near and dear to my heart. And in fact, you can probably see it through the readings that I choose. I'm very interested in talking about issues of class and inclusion and disability as well. So those are the kinds of things. However, I find that also fits into the social efficiency ideology, in that I think that actually makes you a better teacher if you're conscious of those kinds of things. Yeah, and I think that those things all get a little bit wound up together, and I think that that may be one of the things that you started to feel as you were piecing through them as well. I similarly think that art and music can be part of the social reconstruction as well. If the idea is that we want to build a better world, and I want to build one that's actually happier and more balanced as well. So the last bit that I just asked you to do was to just work on your last assignment. So thinking forward to next week, you'll be reading a really classic article. So going back to the scholarly ideology, I'm getting you to read some of the classics by Jean Anyon. However, I think that you'll find it compelling. And interestingly enough, it's also about class. So maybe it's also part of the social reconstruction ideology. People have already started to comment on that. I have asked you to either rewatch or watch a video. You could rewatch The Lottery of Birth, which is one that we watched last summer that I think is an excellent video, very provocative, and continues to inspire me when I watch it. Or you could watch a new video that I found called Class Dismissed, about working class characters on television, or how TV frames the working class. I figured that that would be a useful one to pair with the Jean Anyon reading, and it sort of takes off from where we were discussing things last summer in critical pedagogy, and hopefully that if you weren't with us last summer, you did discuss in critical pedagogy. Last of all, I asked you to go out and find some things about the hidden curriculum, because this is a concept that is talked about a lot in education, and I think it would be useful for you to have your own definition at hand by the time you're finished the course. Now on to the alternative curriculum that's been developing, and some of you may hate this, and if so, you can turn this off now. I'm thinking about the extension exercises and thinking about the fact that so many of us don't like our own drawings, and so I turned once again to Linda Berry, and one of the things I loved was her little treatise here on liking and not liking our drawings. So here she says, "What happens to a drawing when we dislike it? I will demonstrate. I do not like dog and beaver. Ah, yet it survives your dislike. Astonishing." So I share that just because I want you to make the attempt to do some drawing, even if you don't like your drawings. And I share these drawings also because they are so rudimentary and so childlike that I'm hoping that it will take away any of your fear if you do have fear about drawing. Okay, so that's pretty well it for this week. I am going to be head down doing marking, but I look forward to seeing your next posts. Thanks. Bye.